What is up, everyone, and welcome to your new favorite show on the internet and the Golazo network, or both. Call it what you want, which can be soccer, it can be fuchiball, football, calcio, whatever, as long as you love it as much as we do. I'm Jimmy Conrad alongside Charlie Davies and Jesse Marsch, and you can call us what you want. I prefer Conradinho because I fancy myself as a Brazilian number 10, but Jim, or has been, I guess works too. I'm going to call Charlie Chuckwagon. I'm going to call Jesse Coach, but maybe you guys don't want those nicknames. Jesse, what is a nickname that you have had in the past, or maybe some fans call you when you're coaching on the sidelines?
Yeah, I was Marshmallow a lot when I was growing up because I guess my last name. And then a bunch when the different places I've been, a bunch of names that we probably can't repeat here. But yeah, I'm excited to be here, Jimmy. I want to apologize to you guys and to all of our viewers and listeners. I don't have the same memorabilia in the background and all of the great moments in my career that you guys are exhibiting there, but I'm happy to be here. Let's have some fun. Let's get this thing started.
Wait, Jesse, you do have the memorabilia. You just are more humble than me and Charlie to not have it behind you.
That's a possibility.
Okay, good. I just want to
we
make
don't
sure
need to go.
That's
another show.
And Charlie, I'm going to call you Chuckwagon. You want another nickname, or is that the one you're cool with?
You know I'm cool with that.
Okay.
I'm cool with everything.
Chuckwagon. I appreciate you. It's great to see you as always. Okay, so in the spirit of our show and calling it what you want, did you know, guys, that in Hindi it is called football? Yeah.
I did not know that.
You did not know that. And you know what? We're cool with that as long as they love it as much as we do. Jesse, you okay with football, or does it matter?
Yeah, but I'm trying to think of some Hindi or Indian players, and I thought there was one that was at Sporting KC with you.
Yes.
Is that right?
He came to us. Before he came to us, he was one of my teammates, Sunil Chetri. He was billed as the Michael Jordan of soccer in India, and he's very good. He's set all types of records for the Indian national team. But he didn't necessarily get the chance that he needed to shine with us in Kansas City, and so he ended up going back. But you could see that he had some sauce to his game for sure.
And a striker? He was a striker, or what was he?
He felt like a second striker. So not the out-and-out number 9, but either a number 10 or just floating underneath the 9.
I don't know if you guys remember, there is the only Indian player that I know of, like top quality, he played for PSG, Vikash Dorso. Do you remember that name?
I don't.
Chance? No. Was that back when you played in France, or when was it?
No, it was before. It was I want to say early 2000s. I remember playing, I think it was FIFA, and he was like a top player, and I was like, who is this guy? And he was from India.
I took a trip around the world with my family, and we spent a lot of time in India and Nepal. And we were always, wherever we were traveling, we were always looking for someone who would have a ball or whatever and to have a kick around with my kids. But the only thing you see there is cricket, right? So then my kids started playing cricket and knocking the ball around with the bat. And some kids were helping them out and showing them the form. So, yeah, I mean, sport in general, I think, unites the world. But obviously, our sport seriously does that. So
I think Tony Miola was talking about playing cricket, and he said he was absolutely smashing them because he had the baseball background, but then they started doing the curves, and he said he had no chance. Yeah,
hitting the dirt, and it's more about protecting the wickets, I think, than it is about actually hitting home runs. But I could see Tony out there swinging for the fences.
Yes, 100%.
Right, well, let's talk about this show overall so everybody knows what's cooking with us. We're going to be talking about all things U.S. men's national team, and we're going to add a little cowbell to it. Everybody needs a little more cowbell. Just a previous iteration of the show, we did something similar. We're taking it to the next level and obviously adding Jesse Marsch and his coaching experience to the equation. We're obviously going to talk about our incredibly talented player pool in Europe, South America, North America, wherever our players are having success, our youth national teams, our U23 Olympic team. Awesome that we qualified for the Olympics for the first time in forever. Really anything in the American soccer umbrella as a whole, including MLS Cup and Copa America, which we will get to. But I want to talk about this player pool. And Jesse, this is a story between you and I. I know Chuck was at this camp as well. He was injured at the time coming off his incredibly sad accident. But I think we were coming off a lackluster practice. I think this is 2010 January camp. Bob Bradley was the coach, and I believe you were there as a part of the coaching staff. And it got back to us, and I want you to confirm or deny whether this is true or not, but it got back to us players that Bob had said that he had wished he could drop a bomb on this whole player pool and start over, which obviously, no joke, which obviously did not go over well with the group. And so I want you to address that. But then the follow-up question is, do you think our current player pool is the player pool that Bob wished that he had?
Well, you know, that's been bubbling inside, Jimmy.
Oh, I've been waiting for a long time to have Jesse Marsch as a co-host, so I can ask him.
Okay. No, I don't remember that, Jimmy. I don't know. I mean, I thought, listen, I was new to being on the coaching staff. And so I was excited to be there. And I remember you and I had a couple really good conversations about your role in the team and your desire to make the World Cup. And, but I think that the January camps were always about the opportunity that the players could have to earn a spot in with the, quote unquote, first group. Which were often the Europeans. So I don't remember that. And the second question again was what about this player pool and being Bob's type?
Like using that as kind of the foundation for this next question. Do you think Bob wished he had our current player pool instead of the one that he had then? I mean, do you think he would have been excited to coach these current guys?
I mean, I think when you're a coach, you're always excited about the opportunity to work with good players. Clearly, this pool has a lot of talented players that would be exciting to work with, exciting to mold. But I really think we loved that group that we had, and Charlie, I mean, you went to the Confederations Cup before I was there, but I just watched it as a fan. That was the last year I played as a pro, and watching you guys in South Africa take it to Spain, and play so well against Brazil in the final and almost, win our country the first big trophy that we would have ever won. Still, I think that team and working with all those guys, and you had Dempsey, you had Donovan, you had so many good players. So, I don't know. I think that era was still a really good era with Bob as the coach and with those players.
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't bring it up to like toot my own horn. I didn't end up making the World Cup team, so it felt like it was more about other players, and I was already kind of getting edged out in some ways, which is fine. I was a little bit older, but it was more about just the statement overall. Dropping a bomb. We must have not had a very good practice, because that has to come from somewhere deep inside.
I don't think that's true, Jimmy. I don't know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Jim, I'm a big fan of some of your takes, but in this case, Bob Bradley was coming off an incredible summer. I mean, obviously the Gold Cup final was obviously not.
But this is a January camp. So
the best of finishes for a Gold Cup. But in terms of what this group had, I know it's mostly MLS players, but look at the MLS guys that were Stu Holden was just moving to Bolton from MLS. You had Landon, who was still in MLS. There were guys, Ricardo Clark. You had guys who were big parts of the first team that were MLS guys too. So it wasn't like everyone was in Europe. And to answer that second part, who wouldn't want to coach this group? This group is super young, super talented. A lot of guys playing in Europe, because I think Bob, everyone says Jurgen was the guy that was like, everyone has to be in Europe. I think actually Bob wanted all the players to be in Europe, because when I came into the national team and I was making that decision of taking the guaranteed contract to play in MLS or go to Europe and try to make it, I knew that if I wanted to be on the national team and I wanted to be the best, I had to be in Europe. So I think Bob doesn't get the credit he deserves when you talk about pushing players to play in Europe.
No, that's fair. I mean, I just thought that comment was interesting, obviously, from Bob. And now that I've had my own coaching experience, I can understand where that comes from at times, especially if you're frustrated with a particular group that's not grasping concepts and adapting accordingly. And to your point, a January camp is different, right? It's not the guys that were in the Confederations Cup that are driving that kind of conversation. It's guys that aren't in the player pool very regularly, and you're trying to figure out who can help you in different types of situations. And again, in that camp, Bob made me captain of that in that game against Honduras. I got 2 yellow cards in 15 minutes and got chucked out, and that was my last ever national team appearance. We don't need to get into my feelings about that whole thing, but this really wasn't complete shade on Bob. I think he did a tremendous job when he was in charge. But
yeah, I mean, Bob was one of the guys that would, as a coach, that would say to me, like, it's our job to make sure the players know what we want him to do, and I definitely feel like that now. If the team underperforms, I'm not the kind of guy that's like blaming the players and why didn't they do this? It's more, what are we missing? What are we not getting across? How can we do our job better so that the players are able to perform the way that they need to, right? So for me, it's always about maximizing potential. How do you help a group of people be the best that they can be? And so that's what I always felt Bob, demanded that when I played for him. He demanded that out of me and got that out of me often.
I can't believe Jimmy was holding on to that for nearly 14 years.
I was holding on to that a long time. Well, because it was real. I mean, it impacted the group. I brought it up because it impacted the group, and whether it was.
But when you say that, how did it impact the group? Like what?
Because it got around that Bob didn't care for us.
Yeah.
He didn't want us to be there. So
okay.
Maybe that was a motivational tool. I don't think it necessarily worked out in that particular camp, but I could see it working out with maybe a different set of players who are absorbing that information in different ways and in a more positive way than it ended up happening. The ripple effect wasn't positive. I will just say that. All right, we're going to take our first break of Call It What You Want. When we come back, we got to talk about the MLS Cup final. We got Copa America. We got a whole bunch of stuff. So don't go anywhere.
You and Bob need to have a phone call.
Well, let's talk about MLS Cup. It just happened, and the Columbus Crew, under the steady guidance of first-year coach Wilfried Nancy, win MLS Cup, their third ever trophy in their history. Very, very big deal. And Jesse, let's just talk about Wilfried Nancy's performance as a coach overall. It's not easy to go into a club in the first year and really lay down your philosophy and foundation that quickly and having players adapt to it that quickly. I found that fascinating because usually when a coach comes in, it's like year 3. We're going to win it in year 3, but he did it in year 1.
5-year plan.
5-year plan.
Do you guys know that Wilfried and I worked together?
In Montreal? Did you?
Yeah.
No way.
No, I did not.
When I was the coach, he was working in the academy. So there was a guy named Philippe Olefoy, and he was the academy director. And Wilfried, I think, was coaching the 15s at the time. So we would have a lot of coaching meetings and discussions and discuss what we were trying to do with the first team and how the academy could try to emulate some of the qualities and style of football that we were trying to create with the first team. And Wilfried was always the guy in those meetings asking the right kinds of questions, inquisitive, seriously into his job, really liked working with the team. And we discussed throughout that season, should we bring Wilfried in with the first team? Right. And the club felt so strongly about the job he was doing with the academy that in the end, we wound up letting him finish the year there. And who knows, if I would have continued on in Montreal, maybe he would have gotten into the first team quicker. But you could tell back then that, he had a future and that he was serious and that he had some football ideas and he had the right kinds of questions. So I'm really excited to see him have the success that he's had now and establish himself so well. I think that the way his team played, certainly in MLS Cup final, but overall throughout the season and how they got better and better says a lot about the job he's done. And I'll say this, I don't know if maybe you guys picked this up or not. As Hernandez, as they're checking the VAR for the penalty, he calls over Amundsen and I think one other player. And I see him talking to him on the sideline, and he's talking about Amundsen coming away from the midfield line to find a little bit of space, and that is the play that winds up leading to the second goal. So I'm not 100% sure that that's what he was speaking about, but he's an intelligent guy. You can see he has a way that he wants his team to play, and certainly the way that they were able to execute on that day of MLS Cup. Really, I think, especially first half, they dominated. So well done, Wilfried. And congratulations, huh?
Yeah, it was incredible. And that performance, I think, really speaks to what he's about and the team overall, that they stayed true to who they were. And win or lose, they were going to go down in their style. And I think that's evident by even in the last, 2 or 3 minutes, you have Kevin Molina who's got the ball. And you'd think at that point, hey, you're up a goal, just knock it long. But they're still trying to play out of tough situations. I was like, all right, they're staying true to that. But Chuck, what were your thoughts on the game overall? Let's talk about Darlington Nagbe. This is his 4th MLS Cup with his 3rd different team, which really speaks to him being a serial winner. I mean, the guy just wins at every level, no matter where he is.
Well, first off, I want to address Wilfried Nancy just in how he had to come into Columbus from Montreal with a game plan to get the best out of his best player, which was Lucas Zelarayan, right? You're trying to figure out, how do I get the most out of Lucas Zelarayan and Cucho Hernandez, and you sell him mid-season to still reinvent the team with Matan. You bring in Diego Rossi, and all of a sudden you don't skip a beat. If not, you get better, because now it feels like the team is able to kind of move the ball around without having to just focus on getting to Zelarayan and then play off of him. So I think it freed up Darlington Nagbe and Aiden Morris a little bit more, so they could now start to make those decisions on when to play, when to keep it. And in this game in particular, it just showed how much quality they have in possession. And it's not wasted possession. It's, as Wilfred Nancy would always say, it's possession with a purpose. We're trying to move LFC and also neutralize them from playing to their strengths, which was sit back, counter, be aggressive in transition. We're not allowing them to do that. So I thought it was fantastic. And since you touched on Darlington Nagbe, this is one of the best players to ever play in MLS. Not just best American, best player, one of the best players to play in MLS. He is so good with the ball at his feet. He makes the right decisions. In terms of dribbling out of pressure, you can always rely on him to do that. But he's also a great passer. He doesn't get enough credit for the all-around player that he is, because, early on in the Portland days, it was focus on being more of a midfielder who's going to give you numbers, assists, and goals. And I think that took away from what he's so good at, which is being an outlet, being another option to play out of trouble, play to him when you're in trouble, to keep the ball. So I think this match really has been able to highlight just how good he is this season in particular. And now I think we're all looking at it like, damn, what happened with the U.S. men's national team? Why weren't we able to have him be a big part of the picture?
Yeah, that's a huge question. And I think Darlington has come out and spoke about the travel, but there might have been some other things that were happening behind the scenes that we're unaware of, but there's no denying how incredibly talented he is. Fun fact, I played with him once in a five-a-side kind of thing, and I was so happy he was on my team. That guy doesn't run. He glides by people, and I think that just speaks to just his calmness on the ball, his composure, and also another player that just keeps his head up the whole time. He doesn't have to look down, and that makes the game a lot easier for him, of course. But Jesse, this is a question for you, and it's two-sided, because you have LAFC and Steve Cherundolo, who has a first-year coach, won MLS Cup, and I know that Wilfred Nancy's been coaching for a while, as had Steve. But with this particular team in LAFC, he gets to 3 finals, right? They get to CONCACAF Champions League final, Campeones Cup final, and now MLS Cup, and don't win any of them. And then you have, with bringing Wilfred Nancy back into the conversation, how can he try to replicate the success he's had in year 1 with Columbus, as Cherundolo tried to do in year 2 with LAFC? Because as we know, that's not an easy task to try to re-motivate the guys to go again.
Yeah, I think there's a number, we've played on championship teams before, Jimmy, right? And it's almost that year after winning the title that is so difficult. Everybody thinks that they had a little bit more to do with the success than probably what they actually had. Everybody kind of forgets how hard it was, all the sacrifices that had to be made. Everybody thinks it was easier than what it was. And so the idea of work ethic, the idea of still being selfless, that is hard to continue to enforce and reinforce in the team to make sure that you have the hunger for the success like you often had in the first year. And that's what, sometimes when you go talk about dynasties, whether it's been in our sport, the Chicago Bulls, you can go down the list of different sport teams.
Patriots.
The Patriots. Let's say the Patriots. Let's say the Patriots, Charlie. But you need special kinds of leaders on the inside that know how to push the buttons, that know how to still bring the best and the hunger out of players in those moments. So, I think that often, as hard as winning the first title is, that winning the subsequent titles can be even more difficult. So we'll see. Columbus, I think, has a good team. I don't think they're the best team in the league, right? They're a good team. And clearly, like we know with MLS, if you peak at the right time, if luck comes your way, like things can happen where Columbus has to go on the road for MLS Cup, and then maybe everything's a little bit different. So you kind of need the breaks to go your way in the final moments of the season to get to MLS Cup and then to eventually win it. But of course, the next challenge is you celebrate that night, you enjoy it, and then you wake up the next morning, you get back to work.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Yeah, new season ahead of you. I think the breaks not necessarily went Columbus's way, but they definitely created their own luck when they were down 2-0 to Cincinnati in the semifinals and came back to win that one.
Yeah,
really impressive response there. And how they coped with adversity, I thought, especially through the playoffs, was very impressive. When you include having a 2-week break because of the international break and all these little things that could throw you off your rhythm. All right, so Chuck, I'm going to come to you. Let's talk about how the Americans performed in this MLS Cup final. You have Nagbe. I wonder if Berhalter's like, hey, what do you think? What do you think? You want to come back in? You have Aiden Morris. You got Schulte in goal, who was excellent. Made some big saves for the crew along the way. You got Acosta and Tillman on LAFC. That could get a look. Do you think any of those guys will get called into the January camp?
January camp, yeah. I mean, I think overall you have some players who I think are deserving of a January call-up. I mean, DeJuan Jones is another player who's been stellar at left back for New England. I think he deserves some more looks. Aiden Morris in MLS has performed really well. With the national team, he hasn't quite lived up to that expectation, but I was in that same boat. It took me a couple of opportunities with the national team to then finally catch up, understand what the coach wants, the speed of play, the tendencies of players, understanding my responsibilities within the national team. So I think for different players, it happens at different times and moments, and you just have to keep plugging away. And I love when guys keep their head up and they keep working, or keep their head down and keep working, and not expect anything, and not talking about, oh, I deserve to be on the national league. Keep working, and when your opportunity comes, you take it. And I think Aiden Morris has earned another opportunity to get called up for the January camp.
Yeah, I think, and some of the guys that I've worked with, I think Matt Miazga, obviously defender of the year, but I think Matt's maturity, I think the best decision he made.
Can you say maturity when he goes into a referee's thing and and gets suspended for the playoffs? I mean,
listen, on the pitch, he looks so much more like a man than what I remember coaching of him. And even I visited different times when he was in Europe, when I was in Salzburg at one point, and the question mark was always a little bit about his discipline, his urgency, his intensity. And I think this year now he started to show that. And I think for him, coming back to MLS was a really good decision. I think Tim Parker also had a really good season with St. Louis. I think he developed some really big leadership skills there and became the guy that they needed in the back line. It was nice to see, I think, him continue to evolve, and I think Bradley Carnell's done a great job with him. And then, the kid at New York Red Bulls, Tolkien. Gregg likes left backs that can be mobile, that are good on the ball, that are active, that play brave. I think that this is a young guy that should be considered, that should be brought into January camp. I know he's been in with the national team already, but I think it's time to take a really good look at him and say, could this be the left back of the future?
That's right. We're going to take our next break of Call It What You Want. When we come back, we're going to talk about how the Americans performed abroad. So don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Call It What You Want. I'm Jimmy Conrad alongside Jesse Marsch and Charlie Davies, and we are excited to get into this segment, Americans Abroad. And we're going to talk about individual players, of course, but let's take a look at the results. PSV beat Heerenveen 2-0. Ricardo Pepi with a goal in the 78th minute. He maybe should have had another one there at the very end, but clearly making the most of his minutes. Juventus 1-0 over Napoli. Wes McKennie got the start, got subbed out a little bit early, but he was high up the field, almost next to Vlahovic for a lot of the game, so we can talk about that a little bit. Atalanta beating AC Milan 3-2, full 90 for Christian Pulisic and Yunus Musa. And then Folarin Balogun, 2 assists for Monaco in their 2-1 win away from home against Rennes. And Matt Turner wins back his starting spot. First time he's played for Forest since 6 weeks ago when they lost 3-0 to Liverpool. It was a 1-1 draw against Wolves. He made a couple big saves in that particular game. Good to see him back between the sticks. But Charlie, I'm going to come to you first. Like, which player would you like to highlight of our player pool that's maybe had a good performance lately, or maybe not a good performance, or just a performance that you want to talk about?
Well, let's start with Matt Turner. Okay. And the reason why I start with Matt Turner is because finally he gets to start after sitting on the bench for 5 matches. He was benched after the Liverpool game where they lost 3-0 at Anfield. He had some questionable plays in that game, and I think the manager wanted to switch it up and give the backup a chance, and the backup didn't fare too well. I mean, he had 12 goals against in 5 appearances, and the last one was a 5-0 drubbing at Fulham. So Matt Turner goes back in and gets the 1-1 draw at Wolves. Not an easy place to play either, a tough opponent. And that position in particular is so important to the U.S. because there is no depth. Look at the depth chart and goalkeeper. It's Gaga Sonina, who's playing in Belgium, and he's, been shipping goals in that league. Still, it's his first season.
You're trying to find the polite
playing.
word.
Yeah.
He's shipping goals. That's what we settled on.
Yeah, exactly.
Turner's backup too at Nottingham, right?
And then Horvath, right? So it's kind of, you're like, what the hell we do here if Turner's not playing? So it's good to see him back in the goal. And we know when Turner is confident, we saw him in the World Cup. He's a top class keeper. He maybe not the best with his feet, but that's okay. Just be a shot stopper. What Americans have been good at for years, for decades, from Brad Friedel, Casey Keller, Tony Meola, Tim Howard, now Matt Turner. So you just want it. Brad Guzan, another one. Just be good at stopping the ball from going into the goal. And
Charlie, do you know that Bruce Arena made the decision in 2002 for Brad Friedel because he was better with his feet?
Really?
Yes. That's the reason. And it was so close between the two. Obviously, they were both playing at such a high level. But that was Bruce made that decision based on Friedel's ability to play out of the back.
Well, I can tell you, right? It probably should have just been like penalty kick saves because that's Brad Friedel's elite there. So
Casey Keller's 6 World Cup starts, 0 wins, 5 losses, 1 tie. Listen, I love Casey Keller, tremendous goalkeeper. But that's a crazy stat for someone of his quality that we could never get a result with him between the sticks.
Yeah.
It is interesting when you have players that are that close, right? And you're just trying to now make a decision that you think is right for that group, for that team, for that time. And even now with Forrest going back and forth, right? It's never easy. The goalkeeper position is always a little bit of a sensitive topic when it comes to decision making from coaches. But yeah, I mean, it's a brave move to make the decision simply based on his ability to play with his feet.
Well, let's get to your Americans abroad pick. Who are we talking about, Jesse, with this one? We heard from Chuck with Matt Turner. Who are you going with?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Folarin Balogun. And, I've enjoyed watching him now that he's become an American, and he's just down the road here at Monaco. So it's about 4 hours for me. So I've been over there at the stadium to see him play a couple times. There's also a lot of Red Bull players and Red Bull coach there, so people that I know. And one of the matches I was at was the one when Folarin missed the 2 penalties, right?
Yeah.
And at that moment, it was a big loss to Nice, and he could have easily really fallen back and gotten nervous and felt the pressure. And he came out the next week and had a really good performance, and he's continued to be a really important player for them. So he picks up 2 assists this week. One was a really clever, cheeky little pass on the first goal where he could have easily taken a shot, but out of the corner of his eye, he saw a player to his right, and he slipped a really well-weighted pass where the player was able to come on and strike it first time. And then the second one was one of these sort of passes at midfield in the buildup that wound up, I think it was Fofana took a long run and scored a goal. So that was more of a gift of an assist. But the first one was a really good play. And, the people that I've talked to at Monaco, they speak really highly of him. They say he's got a really good mentality. He's a really good worker. He wants to learn. And the only thing I'm when I'm watching games, I almost feel like he makes some good runs and that his teammates haven't really figured out how to use him enough yet. Because when they find him, he's making good runs and good movement in behind. And I think if he can become more of a focal point of how they can use him, not just in transition, but in buildup, I think he can continue to have some big chances and then be on the score sheet more with goals and assists. And I think it'll only be a matter of time. So yeah, I really like him. I think he has a lot of quality. I think he's got some speed. He's good around the goal. He's not the biggest striker, but he's still strong and he can hold balls the right way. And I just think he needs to continue to try to insert himself and find ways of sprinting in the box, sprinting in transition, being in dangerous spots, really being relentless around the goal. But it'll come. I'm confident that it'll come for him.
You brought up a great point, and I'm curious from your coaching perspective, a striker like Folarin Balogun, do you look at stats like expected goals if you're looking at strikers? Because, I'm always wondering what a manager thinks in terms of the eye test versus stats. I'm looking on a computer. I'm looking up a young striker who's quick, puts himself in front of goal. How much do you weigh the stats and the numbers versus like the eye test? Because
Jesse, Charlie's talking about himself again, but he's talking about.
I am absolutely not talking about myself.
Yeah, you are.
No. Well, listen. I mean, of course, we know that strikers can be streaky, right? And we know that certain strikers just have a way of scoring goals, and then others, they're well-rounded strikers. They fit in the game in a lot of different ways. I think Balogun can do a lot of different things. I also think he can sprint more. I think he can really be doing even on the second goal, if you watch carefully, he's still lagging behind where after he makes the pass, and I used to always use Lewandowski as the best example. Lewandowski would come underneath, catch balls, play him out wide, and then he would sprint as fast as he could as if it were a competition between him and the center back to get to the dangerous spot or to get to the penalty spot or to get to the first post as quickly as he can. And I think often a measure of a really good striker is how many easy goals do they score? Not how many worldies, not how many outside the box in the upper corner, but how many times are they inserting themselves in the spots that are the most dangerous? So it's always important that they're getting chances. Are they always scoring them? Okay, you believe that eventually a striker will come around and he'll get his chance. And when he gets his chances, he'll score his goals. But I think it's about sprinting, putting yourself in dangerous spots, being relentless, going again and again. And that's the way to insert yourself into the game.
Yeah, no, I love Balogun, and I think your description of him, Jesse, with Monaco is very similar to the U.S. How can we get him more involved? How can he be more of a focal point? And when we do make him more of a focal point, he ends up having a tremendous impact. So long may that continue, and long may we continue to give him the ball in dangerous areas. All right, I'm going to go.
Hey, wait, let me just pick up on the Charlie part, Jimmy.
Okay.
Charlie was that kind of striker, right? Charlie was a guy that, he liked to touch the ball, but he loved to score goals. So he was relentless at sprinting in the box, running in the box, sometimes with the ball going 1v1, but always knowing that the tap-ins are the best way to score goals.
Got to put yourself there.
Yeah.
And Charlie was a tap-in merchant, so I'm
get out of here. I was a tap-in merchant. Get out of here.
Tap-in merchant. Listen, Charlie loved the celebration. Charlie loved the celebration more, I think, than the goals. Now, of course. Now, Charlie, special player, of course. Now, I'm going to go Americans abroad. Mine's more in the concern department, a little bit concerned.
Oh, okay.
Tim Ream is my concern because in the last 5 games for Fulham, they lost to Aston Villa 3-1, so they gave up 3 goals there. Then they beat Wolves 3-2, gave up another 2 there. They lost 4-3 to Liverpool, gave up 4 goals there. And then he's not in the 8, or he is in the 18, but doesn't play against Nottingham Forest. And Fulham wins 5-0. And then this past game against West Ham, he's not in the 23 or 18 at all. He's not on it. We have no news outside he might be injured. And Fulham win again 5-0 against West Ham. So I'm now a little worried for Mr. Tim Ream and his status within Fulham, because if you're Marco Silva, the coach of Fulham, why would you change anything in that starting 11 after back-to-back 5-0 wins? You're not. Anthony Robinson has been fantastic, by the way, over these 5-game stretch, even if they didn't win all of them. Going forward, he's just really picking his spots well, when to join the attack and when to stay back. And I loved his continued maturation under Marco Silva. But with regard to Tim Ream, I don't know what this means. And obviously we want our players in top form heading into Copa America and the Nations League next year. Are you guys as concerned as I am? Jesse, I'm going to come to you because you can't, even though Tim Ream is the captain, do you bring him back into a team that is playing as well as they are at the current moment?
I would say that Marco Silva probably doesn't bring him in right away. Okay. However, like we've seen with Matt Turner, eventually, especially in the Premier League, like when you're a team like Fulham, when you're a team like Nottingham Forest, that league keeps you very honest. And if you're not performing week in and week out at the absolute top, then obviously it's going to open the discussion within a coaching staff on, what kind of personnel changes do we need to make? So, I think that it's an unfortunate timing for Tim. When you look at the metrics versus with Tim and without Tim over the last couple seasons, it's relatively close if you take out these last 2 games, right? Like the team has still performed really well with Tim over the last 2 years.
No
and
question.
They've been a good team. And Tim has performed really well. So he's earned his spot in that group, but it's also natural when a team wins twice in a row, especially a team like Fulham, 5-0, that you're probably not going to see a lot of changes in the lineup. But give it a couple weeks, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Tim back in. And also Boxing Day, the holidays start to come, matches come fast. Tim will have his chance to reinsert himself back into the team, and I think he can take it from there.
Yeah, Fulham's new center back pairing, both 26 years old. Tim Ream, 10 years older at 36. Age is just a number, especially when you're playing as well as Tim Ream has over the past couple seasons, but that might change, and hopefully it does not. Anyway, we're going to take our next break of Call It What You Want. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Copa America and the USA's draw in that. Do we have a chance to go a long way? Come back and find out. Welcome back to Call It What You Want. I brought the because it's time to talk about some football from South America. They're bringing their tournament here to the States in 2024, the summer Copa America. It's all kicking off. 16 teams are in the tournament, and the U.S. have their group. They are going to take on Bolivia first. That's going to happen June 23rd in Arlington, Texas, where the Dallas Cowboys, America's team, play their games. And then 4 days later, June 27th, we're going to take on Panama in Atlanta. And then the big one, Monday, July 1st, U.S. versus Uruguay in Kansas City. They actually have played there before in a friendly before the 2022 World Cup. And now we get another crack at them. Obviously, in my humble opinion, Jesse, I'm going to come to you first on this. I think that's the game that's going to decide whether we win our group or not. And if we win our group, we'll most likely avoid Brazil in the next round, which is what I think we all want.
I would agree with that. And that will be a tough match as well. Marcelo Bielsa obviously has gotten a lot out of Uruguay already. It will be a very intensive match. That's what he loves. It'll be interesting on July 1st in the heat of Kansas City.
Yeah, brutal.
That will challenge, I think, the way that Uruguay wants to play, and it will also challenge our guys to play the way that we want to play. So, yeah, I agree with you. And certainly getting a signature win against Uruguay would be good. And avoiding Brazil in the next round would be even better.
Yeah, like define a signature win for us. Where have we had signature wins in the past in our program?
Yeah, I mean, if you go back through time, okay, so in '94 we beat Colombia, and they were Pele, I think, said they would win the World Cup. So they were at that point a very, very formidable team in the world. Then you fast forward to 2002. I think Portugal was FIFA #1 in the world at that time, and we beat them in the group phase. Then even if you talk about 2009 and Charlie's team, they beat Spain and took Brazil to the limit in the final in the Confederations Cup. So I don't think we're being absurd by expecting that this group of players should now be thinking about how to beat the best teams. The biggest disadvantage they have is in the current form of the way that Nations League works around the world and COVID. They haven't always had the opportunity to play top teams, but they just had Germany at home and they fell flat in that match. So again, I think for us, before we want to start talking about the potential of winning a World Cup or making a semifinal at home or however we want to speak about it, we need to start to see some big wins here at this moment in time in this tournament.
Okay. Charlie, your thoughts on signature wins? You think this group has done it? Have we done it? I mean, we beat Mexico.
So
some big games under pressure.
But it's not the same Mexico. We know that. It wasn't the same Mexico. It's a big performance. And we're talking Nations League, the final, that first one, the inaugural Nations League. Incredible performance to win that, whether it was the PK from Christian Pulisic in that pressure moment or the PK save from Ethan Horvath coming in as a substitute for Zach Steffen. That was just a magical evening, and it kind of set the tone for this group. They needed that signature win at that stage to give them that confidence to go forward and qualify for a World Cup. Then they won the Gold Cup against Mexico. So you're talking about 2 trophies, 2 signature wins for that moment to get them to a World Cup. Now what Jesse's talking about is having success in a World Cup.
I mean, you need to in a big tournament beat the biggest opponents, and we've done that, by the way.
But is there a sense of how we beat those opponents? Does that factor into your equation? Because it's one thing to eke by a team and maybe get one shot on goal and score, and they have 50 and we survived. It's another thing though if we actually outplay one of these countries that we're
Portugal. We went up 3-0.
No, I get that for sure. We was awesome, and we almost gave that lead away, by the way. But yes,
that was an incredible team. The 2002 World Cup team was an incredible team. So yeah,
I just didn't know if the how factored into your.
Of course, it always does. But I mean, essentially, What
No
is
one
important?
remembers the how.
Yeah.
If-
What
if
is
should.
important is that this
If- no,
team-
Listen,
Jimmy,
listen,
if you get to a
how-
World Cup semifinal and you win ugly, and you're in a semifinal, you think anyone's gonna go, oh man, but they played
because
ugly.
ugly doesn't inspire the next generation. The how does. Like if you see some players out there
winning inspires.
I think it's both.
It does.
I think it is
does.
both. I think it is both. I don't think it has to be the prettiest match and we have to dominate, but I think we have to be in the match and then we have to win. We have to find a way to win.
Right.
And we have the ability to do that. And we have the belief. We have the character. We have all the things that we need. Right. And of course, it takes the right day. It takes the best performance we can deliver. But that's the demand. And our expectation is to find that this team finds a way to meet that demand and meet the expectation.
Okay, so what are your expectations?
It's normal.
Jesse, I'll come to you first.
Normal.
Yeah, but where do you think you
at
expect,
home Copa America?
You should-
At home Copa America?
we're-
I think we should have very high expectations.
But
We should
what
be getting
is
out of
it
the
for you?
group.
Yeah, but semifinal,
Then
final, like what's
I think the group is
I would
easy.
say
To say
minimum
get out of the group, I
semifinal.
think that's easy.
semifinal?
I think minimum semifinal, and I would like to see us get to the final. I would like to see us put a tournament together, performances together that show that we are ready for what the World Cup will bring our way.
Okay, Chuck, I'm with you on that, Jesse. Where are you, Chuck?
Yeah, that'd be a slap to the face for CONMEBOL. I'll tell you that right now. If the U.S. got to the final, they'd be like, "What the hell? We want to see the Argentina
But at
Brazil
home,
final."
Charlie, at home it's possible, more than possible.
Yeah, I agree. And the expectations to get to a semifinal, because getting out of the group, that's too easy. Then you got to play Colombia or Brazil. If you finish first in the group, you play Colombia. You better get to the semifinal. You play against Brazil, same thing. This isn't the same Brazil. They don't have that continuity. They're not playing the same style that they've played over the past couple of decades. So yeah, I would say semifinal should be the expectation.
Yeah, I'm the same.
And final, I'm hopeful.
I'm hopeful as well. I hope that we play well. I really want to see the how of we play, Charlie. All right, we are going to take our next break of Call It What You Want. When we come back, we're going to discuss Paramount Plus's new 3-part documentary series, The $1 Billion Goal. Very exciting, and we can't wait to talk about it right after this.
In 1863, a bunch of people in England got together and they formed what came to be known as the Football Association. And the term association has always been crucial to the identity of the sport. People would say, let's play by association rules, meaning the Football Association. But the word association is long, and so it's often shortened to ASOF. In the 1890s, British schoolboys had a habit of taking the first syllable of a word and adding the letters ER to it to make it their own.
So the Oxford ER is a colloquial practice that shortens words by using ER. So some examples would be the word rugby became rugger, the word champagne became champers.
But the problem with the word association is that the first syllable is the word ass. And apparently British schoolboys had too much decorum to take that first syllable. So they skipped over the first syllable and went to the second syllable, SOC. And that's why we play soccer and not asser. Yeah,
that's unbelievable. But I can't wait to see all 3 episodes of this. Again, you can find it streaming on Paramount Plus. I love this documentary in particular, Charlie, because it really explores what I think everybody should know about the game in our country and how these significant moments really led to what we're doing now. And that we have this 24/7 soccer-only channel on Paramount Plus, the Golazo network. I mean, it all started from these huge moments way back when.
Yeah, I mean, I played the game and I didn't know the history quite like this. I was mesmerized. I had Bruce Murray as one of my club coaches for Greater Boston Bolts back in the day. I had
Did you take him for granted? Like you're like whatever to this guy, but not knowing he was an absolute legend?
No, because I had his card and his training cards, so I knew he had played at the highest level. So it wasn't that. And I was just psyched to have a former professional as a club coach. So, I had him, I had Peter Vermees with the U20s, Marcelo Balboa, John Harkes. So I had been around these guys and I always respected the guys who came before me. I had a tremendous amount of respect because they inspired me. But to learn about what they had to deal with and how we hadn't been in a World Cup from 1950 to 1990, all that space in between was barren. These guys were sleeping in campers, 10 guys in a room. It's absolutely incredible what they had to overcome, and they've changed the game.
These guys were my heroes, right? Watching John, I had been to a game in Chicago that summer, and I had seen John Harkes and Tony Meola and Tab Ramos and, Frankie Klopas and Hugo Perez, and go down the list. And it was like watching our superstars. We had basketball and football. We didn't have genuine American soccer superstars until, for me, this team. And this moment was massive. I remember watching the game and seeing the goal and not having any real idea of what the impact would be. When I was younger, we were used to watching the World Cup without the U.S. in it. And the idea of having the U.S. at the World Cup was a really strange thought and really exciting. And so, it's been a step-by-step progression for us to continue to build what this sport is in our country. But those guys are like forefathers. And I played in DC my first year of the league with John Harkes. And I remember going to the first practice and all I could think about was getting the opportunity to meet John Harkes and play on the same pitch with John Harkes. So, those guys deserve so much credit for where we are today, for all the progression of the sport, the league. There's been a lot of people. There's been investors. There's been a lot of people behind the scenes. But certainly that team and those players really moved the needle in terms of what to expect now for the sport in our country.
So that's it, everybody. We're calling it. Call it what you want is done for our very first episode. We want to make sure that you guys follow CIWYW, wherever you get your podcasts. That's our nice mouthy acronym. And take a few seconds to leave us a rating. That would be awesome. If you're on Apple Podcasts, a review would be great too. And catch us on the CBS Sports Golazo Network. So on behalf of Jesse and Charlie and everybody behind the scenes, it's making us look better than we deserve to be. Thank you so much for watching and listening. We'll see you soon. Later.